Imperfect Thriving, Episode 41. I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. Living your most satisfying and fulfilling life, an imperfect thriving kind of life, starts with your 8 domains. It starts with knowing exactly what areas of your life are working the way you want them to and which ones are not. Find out today by signing up for your free Blueprint to Thrive Quick Start. Remember, you must learn where you are right now before you can get to where you want to go. I'm Katherine Ely, former attorney turned licensed counselor and coach. Oh yeah, and recovering perfectionist. It wasn't long ago that my self-criticism and fear kept me from having the self-worth, confidence, and courage to make my life my own. Through life lessons learned and by going back to school in my 40s, I am finally enjoying my life in a way I never thought possible, and it is amazing. I want you right here with me. No need for you to go back to school either. I created this podcast to show you the way to the imperfect thriving kind of life, based on what you value, filled with self-worth, confidence, way more joy, and no more regrets. So let's go. If you are in my generation, you've probably heard the song I Am Woman by Helen Reddy. And if you haven't heard it, it was released 1971 when I was 2 years old, but it was played regularly throughout the 1970s. It's a great song. You should look it up. I've been thinking about this song all week because Helen just passed away recently, and it's the inspiration behind this episode of the podcast. Here is a verse, and I will do you the favor of reading it and not singing it. Oh, yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I've paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can face anything. I am strong. I am invincible. I am woman. Now, a lot of things have changed in the 50 years since this song was written, but not everything has changed. Have we women all found our voices? Are we using them to roar? It turns out that women are 2.5 times less likely to ask questions in academic seminars than men, according to the study from the University of Cambridge. And they researched over 250 classes at 35 schools in 10 different countries. And they asked students who didn't typically speak up in class, why don't you speak up? When asked why they didn't ask questions, even if they wanted to, women said it was because they didn't feel clever enough, they felt nervous, or they worried that they misunderstood the content. Here comes our not enough creeping in, ladies. And what was interesting to me about this study is that there was a 7.6 increase in the number of questions asked by other females present when another woman had the courage to ask a question first. This reminds me of something I read recently in Untamed by Glennon Doyle, a great book if you haven't read it. She has 3 children, and they had a bunch of kids hanging out one day, middle school age kids, I believe. And she was walking through her house and went to the room where the kids were. They were all watching TV, and she asked if anyone was hungry. The boys all answered immediately and answered for themselves. The girls, however, all looked at each other, then to the leader of the girls, and she spoke for them. She said, "No, thank you. We are not hungry." So what leads to this common not enoughness that so many of us women have, that leads us to be nervous or worried about our intellectual abilities and our knowledge? Well, much of it comes from gender roles and what we are taught that it means to be an acceptable female. Most of us were taught to be a good girl is to be quiet and polite, to be agreeable, to be attractive, which means thin, well-dressed, made up, hair done. And a good woman cares for others. We are rewarded and complimented for the behavior that is in line with these gender ideals. And so these compliments and rewards reinforce our behavior. Whatever our parents, churches, teachers rewarded and accepted, we wanted to do more of. For instance, if a parent sees a little girl consoling her teddy bear and hugging it, The parent might say, "What a kind girl you are." This is rewarding for the child and makes it more likely that she will repeat the behavior. Her behavior has been reinforced or strengthened. As children, we have a number of models with whom we identify. These are people in our immediate world, like our parents, older siblings. They can be fantasy characters or people in the media. We identify and model others who have what we would like to possess. So if you are younger than my generation, your story might be a little bit different, but it's probably much the same. So if quiet and polite is good, that means loud and opinionated is bad. If agreeable is good, then confrontational is bad. If thin, well-dressed, with makeup and hair done is good, then even slightly overweight, beyond our ideal, and our natural selves, not made up, that's bad. The perfectionism that we feel with this impromptu speaking, raising our hands in class, speaking out, and answering is debilitating. We are afraid that if we speak up, we will not be seen as a good girl or a good woman. And we don't leave this perfectionism and this way of thinking about ourselves behind when we leave school. Oh no, ladies, we take it out with us into the world. So even though we are born as capable and intelligent as our male counterparts, we are taught in many ways that our intelligence and voice is not what is valuable about us. What is valuable about girls and women is how we look and how we care for others. We begin to value in ourselves only what others value within us, and we lose our voices. We stop asking who we are and what we want. We lose our voices, never really achieving our roar. Some research suggests that expectations for behavior of women have become more flexible as women's social roles have changed. There are some women in leadership positions who are expected to show assertive behavior. However, in terms of men's behavior and women's behaviors that support heterosexual relationships, expectations still seem quite gender stereotype. Researchers examined contemporary gender role norms conducted by focus groups with college students. For women, two of these norms are directly associated with body image concerns, and it is that we invest in our appearance and our thinness. The other 6 norms are modesty, women should be modest, we shouldn't be boastful, domestic, care for children, romantic relationships, and sexual fidelity. Clearly situate women in traditional societal roles. This research was done in 2012, not 1971. So for men, the roles of winning, emotional control, risk-taking, violence, dominance, playboy, self-reliance, primacy of work, power over women, disdain for homosexuals, and pursuit of status help reinforce the patriarchal society that we live in. So we are taught to define our self-worth more by our appearance than by the content of our character. Now, research has found that there is social pressure for girls to disparage their bodies in the form of fat talk. It's acceptable, even expected, for girls to be obsessed with their bodies. Body obsession is related to thinness concerns. One study found that between 30% and 50% of adolescent girls are concerned with their weight, and many report dieting. Recently, researchers found that girls as young as 11 years old engage in self-objectification. Conformity to the ideal body for women is central to our success as women. This is the trend with girls and young women now. What about us women in midlife? Well, as our society values youth, and as baby boomers reinvent what it means to be middle age, there are growing social forces that can undermine our self-esteem and potentially lead to our body dissatisfaction, right? If we see women on television that are 80 years old who look 55, it's very difficult for the rest of us who were almost 55 and looked that age. So combined with health concerns about obesity, all of this can make us feel bad about our bodies and in turn, our self-esteem, ourselves in general. And despite the underdiagnosis of eating disorders in older people, professionals are now reporting an upswing in requests for help for older women. For some of these women, the problem is new, and others have struggled with it for decades. So what can we do as women to focus on who we are and what we want versus how we look? Well, it's definitely not easy, but here are 3 steps that we can do to dig deep, find out who we are, and appreciate ourselves for our substance and not our cover, not what everyone else sees. So number 1, uncover exactly what it is we learned that makes a good girl or a good woman. This is about those you loved and looked up to. What did they model for you, and what did they teach you with their words? Chances are, whatever you learned, you tell yourself that is what you must do to be a good girl or to be a good woman. And if you do the opposite of that, then you must be wrong. This will eat at your self-esteem and your self-confidence. This will reinforce that you have nothing to offer the world of substance, of intellect. So, we want first to uncover exactly what it is, the rigid rules that we've learned about what it means to be a good woman. Second, recognize that you have a choice. Say to yourself, self, I don't have to follow these rules if I don't want to. Today is the day that I get to make a conscious decision. Now, if you like the rules, follow them. I'm not here to push an agenda or tell you what to believe or who to be. I'm just here trying to nudge you to become clear about what you want, rather than following the path that someone else has laid out for you. So find out and make a choice. What do you choose? Do you want to follow these rules, or do you want to choose your own path? Third, write your own rules. One of my favorite quotes is by Jack Kerouac, and I've probably said it on the podcast before, but it warrants saying again today. I discovered my life was a vast, glowing, empty page, and I could write anything I wanted. You get to write your own rules. You get to decide what makes you a good woman, what makes you a happy you. What do you want to be known for in your life? Number 1, uncover the rigid rules. Number 2, make a conscious decision. And number 3, if you don't like the rules that have been handed to you, write your own. And as Helen said, I am a woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore. And I know too much to go back and pretend, because I've heard it all before and I've been there on the floor. No one's ever going to keep me down again. So my suggestion for the one thing you can do today to move closer to your best life is to find your voice and practice it until it becomes a roar. And I will see you right back here next week. If you are enjoying this podcast, would you take a moment to go to iTunes and subscribe? It is so easy to do, and it would mean a lot. Imperfect Thriving is a part of the Practice of the Practice podcast network, a network of podcasts seeking to help you thrive imperfectly. To hear other podcasts like the Bomb Mom podcast, Beta Male Revolution, or Empowered and Unapologetic, go to practiceofthepractice.com/network. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subject matter covered. This is given with the understanding that neither the host, Practice of the Practice, or guests are providing legal, mental health, or other professional information. If you need a professional, I encourage you to reach out to one.